swept into long, tangled chains, spinning helplessly in the violent flow. The flood slams into residential neighborhoods, climbs up the walls, and reaches the rooftops of flat concrete houses. Families huddle on their roofs, waving shirts and jackets, desperate pleas for help. Power poles sink into the rising waters, sparks spit and hiss. Then a substation pops in a muffled explosion, plunging the entire district into darkness.
The crack is expanding faster than projected.
Around them.
We need to alert the regional command immediately.
At Kiasong Military Airfield, in the middle of that same storm, the Vietnamese rescue helicopter roars to life, its engines straining against the wind, while the crew sprints through the downpour with boxes of dry rations, clean water, and medicine. The rotor blades rip the rain into clouds of spray as the helicopter lifts off and punches through the white curtain of water, searchlights cutting narrow tunnels of light through the darkness. As it approaches central Tai Nguyen, the streets are gone. From above, the city is nothing but a chaotic inland ocean, rooftops and treetops barely breaking the surface. People wave frantically from the tops of buildings, the helicopter dropping to a lower altitude so its beam can sweep across each roof where families huddle close together, soaked and shivering. Rain lashes the
saturation levels
so
in these zones are
hard
critical.
The pilot has
and
to
the
strain
seismic
just
data
to see
confirms
ahead,
it.
constantly
Even a minor
adjusting
tremor will
course
cause a
and
massive
altitude
landslide.
in near zero
Capturing the
visibility.
viscous red
Dozens
mud
of bags
as it slowly
packed with
engulfs the
instant noodles
mountainside
and
like cold
emergency
lava.
food tumble out of the aircraft one by one, their descent slowed by small parachutes, so they land softly on tin roofs. Crates of clean water and medicine follow, aimed at clusters of people who've been trapped for days. The wind tugs violently at the cargo lines, making the ropes swing wildly toward walls and antennas. The rescue team clings to the cables with both hands, fighting to keep every load steady amid the gusts and the relentless rain. Below
Millions
them,
of
National
cubic meters
Highway
of earth
3
and
through the
rock
city
gave
center
way
disappears
simultaneously.
beneath the flood.
This gigantic
The
wall
road
of red
surface
mud
is gone,
accelerated down the mountainside
replaced
at
by a
terrifying
surging
speed.
channel where cars sit submerged up to their roofs, the current rushing past like a newly created river. Around the Gang Thep area, water reaches 2 to 4 meters deep, swallowing factories and nearby homes, ripping containers from storage yards and sweeping them all the way out to the main road. Mud pours down from the Tam Dao Mountains, thickening the flood into a dark, red-brown sludge. The route between Daitu and Fo Yen is cut clean off, the connecting road broken and drowned, bringing all transport to a dead halt. A large city bus drifts sideways on the turn, passengers clinging to the upper window, shouting for help as the vehicle spins slowly.
Attention residents, immediate
On the
evacuation
rooftops
to
of
higher
apartment
floors.
blocks,
Do not delay.
crowds press
Hurry,
together,
quickly, move up!
waving white cloths
Watch
and
your
shirts
step.
to
Keep
signal
moving.
distress as the water climbs past the first floor, then the second. Street front shops are torn open as the flood rips up metal shutters, pulling out shelves, signs, and merchandise in one violent rush. A small bridge loses its footing when the water eats away at the foundations. A portion of the structure finally gives way and crashes into the torrent below. The rescue helicopter drops to skim just above the
Help
churning
us! We're
surface.
stuck on the roof!
The downdraft whipping
Please,
up waves
is anyone
that slap
coming?
dangerously close to the fuselage as the pilot maintains an almost impossibly precise altitude. Inflatable rescue boats are thrown from the aircraft and unfold the instant they hit the water, allowing rescue teams to jump down and start hauling people aboard.
Get back,
On
quickly!
top of a container truck, a family of 4 clings together until a cable from the helicopter drops beside them. One by one, they are winched up into the aircraft, leaving the rising water behind. On the roof of the school, dozens of people wait shoulder to shoulder as boxes of dry food and clean water thump down onto the concrete. Spotlight beams sweep across the flooded streets, illuminating cars stacked in strange angles, floating debris and submerged buildings. The rain intensifies, the water rises yet again, and the rescue teams have no choice but to push harder, faster toward the critical zones. From a flycam's distant viewpoint, Tai Nguyen is no longer a city at all. It is a vast, restless ocean in which houses, streets, and vehicles lie completely buried in a single, endless sheet of moving water. Far away, in the mountains of Shanxi, the sky sinks into a heavy, oppressive gray, clouds twisting over the peaks as if wrung tight by unseen hands. The rain there comes in violent bursts, hammering down onto the slopes as lightning rips across the sky again and again. A stark warning of the catastrophe about to unfold. On steep, saturated hillsides, mud and rock lose their grip and begin to move. Rivulets of water that started as harmless trickles suddenly surge, turning into powerful torrents filled with stones and debris, racing downhill like unleashed beasts. A quiet stream in the valley swells rapidly, its surface lifting and heaving as waves slap against the banks, its roar echoing through the forested ravines. In a narrow gorge between two cliffs, a full-fledged debris flow forms in an instant, a towering mass of muddy water and rock hurtling downslope at terrifying speed.
Look, up here!
The dense forest at the foot of the mountain stands no chance. The front of the flow smashes into the tree line, ripping out massive trunks and roots, dragging entire trees along as if they were nothing but twigs. A small mountain road hugging the hillside is swallowed as landslides crash onto its surface. Motorcycles and trucks caught on the route disappear beneath the avalanche of earth and water in seconds. The houses built with their backs to the mountain are hit hard as the torrent slams into doors and windows, shattering them and pouring inside, sweeping away furniture, refrigerators, and even wrenching sheets of roofing metal into the swirling chaos. Nearby warehouses full of grain burst open, sacks of rice and corn bobbing up to the flood's surface and spinning in tight
Hold the line
spirals as they're
steady,
carried
don't
away.
let it hit the roof.
Cattle and buffalo panic
Lower
in
it slowly
farmyards.
now, watch the
Many
wind!
of them swept off their
It's swinging
hooves
left,
and carried
pull
off
right.
downstream in a storm of foam and mud. At the town's main junction, the water climbs past half the height of the utility poles. The current so strong it drags a full-sized bus off the road and into the wild rush. The market becomes a scene of devastation. Stalls flattened, glass display cases shattering, goods scattered and drifting everywhere. Along the riverbank, the retaining wall is overwhelmed as the debris-laden flow from the mountains merges with the main river, amplifying the water's power and turning the channel into a monstrous surge that no barrier can hold back. The wave of destruction pushes on. Water crashes into a primary school perched on a hill. The courtyard is instantly transformed into a swirling basin as desks, chairs, and uprooted saplings are swept away. The electrical substation on the edge of town sinks into the rising flood. Poles bending and snapping, showers of sparks
please
spraying
move
out
forward
in brief
slowly.
bursts before the current shorts and dies.
We need assistance
A livestock
over
farm
here.
collapses under the assault, chicken coops and pig pens disintegrate, their tin roofs ripped apart and hurled aside, while the animals are carried off by the rushing water.
Get the line across
The main
now!
road into the county
Pull
seat
hard,
morphs
watch
into
the
a brutal
current.
cataract.
We have people trapped on
Cars
the roof
flip
over
onto
there.
their sides and are whisked downstream like battered toys. A three-story building stands half submerged, its ground floor completely underwater. People scramble up stairwells and onto the roof, waving and shouting through the storm. A small dam in the valley, overwhelmed by the volume of water, begins to tremble. The spillway overflows, cracks spider against the structure, and then large chunks of the dam burst outward, unleashing yet another massive surge. In the parking lot of the county offices, dozens of cars bob and spin violently, colliding with one another in a chaotic whirlpool. A roadside gas station is torn open, pumps knocked over, signs ripped from their mounts as water rams through the storage area. Down by a field of corn along the river, the torrent washes over the crops completely, erasing the rows in seconds and leaving only a featureless, churning sheet of brown water. A newly built neighborhood that once seemed sturdy now tilts uneasily as the flood undermines its concrete foundations. Houses lean to one side as the soil is gouged away beneath them. A concrete bridge across a small river groans under the repeated hits of the current. Chunks of its pillars break off and drop into the raging channel below. A slope behind the county center gives way, a huge slab of earth collapsing and feeding yet another branch of the flood. A small factory in the industrial zone fills with water, heavy machinery that should never move sliding across the floor and then floating upward as the doors crumple and twist. The town stadium becomes a shallow lake, plastic seats lifting and drifting in clusters like drifting islands. A modest shopping center floods from every side, shelves tipping over, goods pouring into a stairwell that becomes a spiraling drain. The highway skirting the county is buried beneath a slurry of mud and rocks as the debris flow attacks from above, sealing off the route. From a camera mounted high above, the entire settlement appears smothered in thick brown water, only rooftops poking through. Downstream, the flood remains ferocious for kilometers, dragging rooftops, tree
Please,
trunks,
hurry,
and
the
chunks of
water is
broken earth
rising!
along in a relentless, grinding procession. At the same time, far to the east, the Three Gorges region faces its own nightmare, as an extreme discharge begins at the giant dam. Gate after gate opens until the whole face of the structure is lined with roaring torrents, colossal columns of white water blasting downward like detonating water bombs. The thunder of the outflow shakes the valley, a continuous roar like thousands of overlapping thunderclaps. Below the dam, the surface of the Yangtze is pulverized by the impact, towering plumes of spray shooting tens of meters into the air, cloaking the riverbank in mist. The Great River itself darkens into a dense, swirling brown mass, currents twisting into violent eddies that seem hungry to consume anything in their path. The houses along the riverbanks have no time to prepare. The surge arrives with terrifying speed, wrenching entire buildings from their foundations and sweeping them away as if they were made of paper. In nearby industrial zones, rows of containers of massive machines are lifted off the ground, bobbing and pirouetting in the racing water. A three-pillared concrete near Yichang takes the brunt of the impact. Wave after wave slams into its supports until one pillar fractures, the deck breaking and collapsing into the torrent as though a ribbon had been cut. A high-speed road along
Entire
the river
roofs
is
and
overrun,
massive tree
lanes
trunks are
vanishing
swept
beneath
away
floodwater
by the
as cars are
relentless
shoved
force of the
forward,
flood.
swirling helplessly and squeezing together in crushing collisions. Markets by the riverside are erased in minutes, stalls torn up, inventories scattered into wide swirls of floating debris. A 10-story riverside tower loses its entire ground floor to the flood. Water surges in through shattered glass,
The sheer speed
racing
of
up
the rising
stairwells
water
and elevator
caught residents
shafts in a violent
completely off
reverse
guard.
waterfall.
Incredible footage shows
A
the
protective
devastating
levee
power
meant to
of the
shield a nearby town simply cannot withstand the pressure. A long section crumbles, and the flood pours through the break, spawning spinning vortices that devour everything they touch. Down at the tourist pier, a large cruise ship is twisted off balance, sliding away from the dock and rolling onto its side as the current wrenches it loose. A new residential complex nearby feels the brute force of the water as windows implode, torrents of muddy water roaring into living rooms and hallways. The city stadium floods rapidly, waves sweeping across the terraces, seats detaching and clustering as they drift. High-voltage transmission towers along the bank lose their footing as the earth is scoured away. One by one they lean, then crash down into the surging flood. On an outlying farm, barns and sheds disintegrate. The animals are dragged out into the maelstrom, their enclosures vanishing behind them. A road tunnel through the mountains is swallowed as water slams into its entrance, forming a fast-moving funnel that sucks a heavy truck inside and races from the face of the earth. In the old quarter by the waterfront, wooden houses that have stood for a century or more are submerged, their tiled roofs ripped apart by the flood. The city's main pumping station overloads, mechanical systems fail in a hail of ruptures and bangs, sending geysers of water shooting upward before they, too, drown. A small suspension bridge connecting two riverside neighborhoods snaps when the cables finally give way, the entire span dropping into the churning river. A manufacturing plant near the shore has its steel shutter doors bent backward like thin wire. Machinery that once seemed immovable is wrenched free and swept away. At a central intersection, the flood climbs to the height of road signs. A city bus bobbing in the middle, spinning around and around in the heart of a swirling vortex. The courtyard of a 3-story school is transformed into a boiling pool, the main gate smashed to pieces as water tears through the grounds. A riverside park is stripped bare, giant trees toppled and massive stone statues rolled along the ground before disappearing into the depths. On a ridge above the city, additional flash floods plunge down through mountain channels, feeding into the swollen river, doubling its fury. A modern riverside suburb sees its perimeter walls collapse as cars are forced through streets by the brute momentum of the current. At the city's main church, water pushes through the front doors,
The
flooding
surge
the
from the
nave
mountain
and lifting
gorge
rows
has
of heavy
doubled the
wooden
flood's
pews
strength,
into irregular
creating an
rafts.
unstoppable force heading
Underground
directly
parking
for the
garages and
urban
upscale
center.
apartment blocks become vertical reservoirs. Water plunges down the ramps like waterfalls, swallowing cars one after another. Near the docks, a towering crane is hammered by wind and wave until it finally tips and crashes into the river. From high-mounted cameras above the urban sprawl, The entire city is nothing but an immense, rust-colored inland sea, with only a scatter of rooftops still visible. Far downstream, many kilometers away, the river remains a